everybody, thanks for joining me for another one-man review. Today I'll be taking a look at an older Fantagraphics book called Vapor by the artist that just got a mononym here, Max. This is a book that I don't know about. It looked like fun and surreal, and it kind of sold itself as philosophical and interesting like that, but I found it to be pretty empty and hollow. What you have is Nicodemus, otherwise known as Nick, and I think this character's name should be pronounced Moses or Moises, but they call him Mosh. So this almost crazy cat-looking character here, and then Nicodemus is this guy with the big nose, and Nicodemus has gone out into the desert to look for meaning, the final inevitable consciousness, if there is such a thing. God is only contaminated, an infectious idea. I don't pursue ideas, I seek experiences. It is absolute and transparent. What has no weight but falls by its own weight. And then Moshe says, you're having a little sunstroke. So that kind of gives you a sense of what the book is. It's a guy who's wandered out in the desert, having some existential crisis, and is going somewhere where there's no input really, so he can go completely internal. And you have very much, like I said, this crazy cat vibe with the desert. There seems to be a lot of references to that, like Nick gets hit in the head a lot of the times in the book. That's kind of what it is. And then there's just these weird little, almost like 3-4 page stories that seem to supposed to represent some progression in the ideas he's having. Sometimes the art's like really, really nice. Like here, you just get the way all these branches are going together. Kind of has like a Jim Woodring line to it. It feels a little bit, like metaphysically wandering, a bit like Jim Woodring's best work is as well. But it just doesn't, it feels too controlled throughout. I think this was my favorite sequence here. We get very Jungian with like he's confronting his own shadow, literally talking to his shadow, and he gets his shadow to leave him. But I like how the shadow contorts and makes the pages, kind of these bizarre abstract compositions that the character's then engaging with. This seems much more appropriate to someone like really going too deep in their own head. I kind of wish there would have been more of this kind of stuff and less of this just like desert scenery. That seemed a little too much for me. And then at the end of the book, again, there's some really kind of Jim Woodringy type of stuff. Some really nice illustration, like this parade goes by for no reason that I could tell. And then at the end, you get the Vapor, which is a character he's been warned about. And basically the explanation of the Vapor is the Vapor can extend itself over the entire desert and much further. It can cover the sky, and the next instant compress itself into an invisible molecule. Vapor disperses itself. Vapor condenses itself. No form can limit it. Nothing can erode it. Vapor doesn't have contingencies. It doesn't have ideas nor emotions, no fear, no sadness, nor hunger. Blah, blah, blah going on. And so it's kind of like this idea of the nothing versus the something. And like if you could just become the nothing and have it kind of becomes Buddhist in that sense, like Zen, if you have no hopes and desires, you will lose all your pain and your stress. So I don't know, it's about 100-page book. I don't think it's very deep at all. I think this is all pretty well hashed over kind of existential crises, philosophy type of stuff, going out in the desert to lose yourself, to find yourself. And there's very few, like I said, there's a very few parts where what's being done with the art actually like contributed significant amount of meaning to me. So I don't know, but this is quite an older book now, so I'd imagine anyone else who's gonna probably buy it has already bought it. But put this out as like, if people have been interested about this book, this is kind of what it is and the kind of dialogue you get in it. I'm sure some people really like this thing, but to me it just feels like the angsty 22-year-old who's read a little bit too much Nietzsche or something and, looked at Jim Woodring and looked at some Moebius and kind of mushed that all together in an attempt to sound interesting and heady, but didn't really pull it off. Plaza by Yokoyama Yuichi. This is translated by Ryan Holmberg and is very large for a manga, so that's a really cool feature of this book, this standard manga size. And this is just a 200 some odd page representation of what Yokoyama Yuichi thinks of the Carnival parade. and he's just made this like relentlessly loud and rhythmic book that pushes all kinds of amazing boundaries of what comics and manga are, and we could not recommend this book more.